If you would like to attract that husband quality guy in the next 3 to 6 months, listen up because you must make sure you're avoiding doing any of these 5 things. Welcome to the channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. It's great to have you. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about things that have come out of recent client sessions, 5 big ways that you might be pushing away a great husband, really solid future quality guy. Let's dive straight into them. Number 1 is wearing emotional armor. Now, this one can sometimes trigger some egos, so I'm going to explain how you will know if you are doing this. If you ever get the feedback from the majority, or at least a decent chunk of men, that you are intimidating, hard to read, or scary, then you are wearing some degree of emotional armor, and it's keeping good men away. Now, the reason this happens is growing up, when your needs are not being fully met, and this goes for all of us, we look for different ways to adapt to that. And often the way for many of my clients is they had to basically put their unmet needs and the negative, painful emotions that came with those into a corner. So their mum might have said, "Suck it up, buttercup." Their dad might have said, "Harden up, princess." And they learned over time that, hang on a minute, those vulnerable, scary, fearful emotions, they're no good. Expressing them doesn't get me any validation at all. So they push them, or you may have had to push them into a corner. Over years or decades of pushing all those vulnerable, scary emotions into a corner, a curtain, a sheet of armor starts to form over them. Okay, fine. Seems to be working for you. You're not getting more hurt. You then go into a business job or a career where it's even more successful to hide those negative, vulnerable emotions. Those things have no value at work, so why would you use them? But then you go to connect to a man or men and you keep getting this feedback that, "Oh, you're intimidating. I feel like I can't read you. What's that about?" You see, often women think that they can't hurt men or that men shouldn't be scared of getting hurt. Now, it's very true that in the physical realm, of course, women are the ones that should be scared of men. A man can hurt a woman physically in a way that a woman very rarely could a man. But that isn't to say that women can't hurt men. A woman may not have the strength in the physical realm to hurt a man, but you better believe a woman can hurt a man. A woman knows how to dial on a man's deepest insecurity if she really wants to. She can get in on that deepest insecurity and she can say the thing that hurts his soul, that takes him out. Women have that ability if they want to use it. So knowing that to be true, how does a man avoid that situation? Because a man doesn't want to go into that. Well, a man needs feedback. He needs to know when he's treading on the wrong spots. He needs to know when he's doing wrong, and he needs to know how he can avoid hurting a woman so that she doesn't do that back to him, of course. This is where those hurt, vulnerable, and painful emotions are really important. If a man can't see those, if a man doesn't know where those are, then how can he ever know if he's deeply hurt you? How can he ever feel the real emotion? He's basically wandering in the dark. And he's wandering in the dark, worried he could stand on a very bad landmine. A man can sense when a woman has this emotional curtain up because she tends to get a lot shorter with her tonality, and she tends to go to anger a lot more when she's feeling hurt than she would the real emotion, which could be sadness, hurt, fear, uncertainty, etc. A woman wearing emotional armor will almost always go to some form of anger instead. So when a man senses, well, this woman hides all these more vulnerable emotions and she has a lot more access to anger and she's using anger instead, that makes her very intimidating. Again, it's not because he's literally worried about being hurt by you, and it's certainly not because you make a lot of money or have a great career or anything like that. The real core issue is he is worried he is going to stand on one of those emotions that are not being communicated, one of those wounds, and then get extremely hurt by the woman as a revenge response, essentially. So keep in mind, if you're being called intimidating, or if you're getting that feedback that you're scary or hard to read, it is not a function of your career. It is a sign of the shielding that you've had to put around the more vulnerable emotions that you weren't allowed to feel growing up, and opening yourself back up to love. And by the way, I've worked with CEOs, extremely wealthy people who are extremely successful. They're not intimidating. Okay, not if they have access to these emotions when they're with their man. So it's not about success. It's about you opening back up the scary parts of those emotional ranges that have never served you in the past, so that a man can see the full extent, the full humanness of you, and therefore he knows where he's walking around and he's never worried he's going to step on a really bad landmine and get the revenge wrath that could be coming from that. And that actually leads me to number two. And number two, super unattractive thing that you can do that's going to push away good men is being impulsive or impulsiveness. Now, this is not spontaneity. Spontaneity is when you decide, when you think and decide to do something because you feel safe. Now, it's usually on short notice, hence why it's spontaneous. But at the end of the day, when you're being spontaneous, you decide that, yes, I feel safe, I'm actually going to do that thing. Impulsivity is very different. Impulsivity comes from the body. It's not a conscious choice. It comes from the body. And impulsivity happens when you feel unsafe. Now, why is that important? Well, because if you feel unsafe all the time, then you could be zigging and zagging in all different directions with the body basically leading the head. Imagine a company where the CEO, for example, is saying one thing. The CEO is saying, yep, this is trendy and relevant. Our planes are safe. They're great. Everything is well at our plane company. And then down the bottom, the employees are saying something completely different. Where have I heard that before? Would you trust that company? Probably not, right? You can't speak to every individual employee. You only have the head of the company to talk to, but you know that the employees are dissenting. You're not going to feel safe with that company. Well, now imagine that the employees could take control. That would make the company even harder to trust. Because not only is leadership that's talking to you not in control, but you don't know which employee is going to have control on any given day. Sure, it might be a nice employee today, but what if a bad employee takes over tomorrow? The nice employees want you to fly on time. The bad employees are sabotaging the plane. You don't feel safe with that. When we're dealing with a human being on the other side, we need head and heart to match up. And if the body feels unsafe and it's taking over, you'll see impulses. This could be drugs, this could be cheating, this could be pulling away for no reason. You'll see some kind of impulsive behavior when the person feels unsafe that they're unable to speak to. And what they say, as in from their head, will start to become out of alignment with what's going on from their body, as in their actions. This makes the person very unsafe. If you want a man whose head and body are aligned, as in he does what he says and he says what he does, then that's the way you need to be as well. You can't make a man feel safe if you're impulsive, if you're feeling unsafe all the time, and you could be loyal to him one day and cheat on him the next. He can trust your impulses, but he can't trust you. And unfortunately, impulses will do whatever they need to do to protect you first. Your impulses care about protecting you. They don't care about your love for him. This is why impulsiveness, it is a result of trauma, so it has to be often something to be worked through. Unfortunately, it makes you unsafe to someone who's secure and stable. So if you are more of the impulsive type, again, not spontaneous, but impulsive, that's a habit you really need to break if you're going to attract a secure, stable guy. And by the way, did you notice what those first two had in common? Emotional armor and impulsivity. They were both a disconnection of head and body. In other words, both of those two indicate you are disconnected from yourself. Whether it's impulsivity, your body's taken over, or emotional armor, there's a lot behind that curtain. You are disconnected from you. And it's very hard for a good man to connect to you if you can't connect to you. Hopefully that makes sense. Those two are the biggest in this video. If you can be truly connected to yourself, then a man can connect to you, trust you, and feel safe with you. Three other big ones I want to talk about, though. The first is failing to embody the traits you want. Being hypocritical. I see women who come to me and they say, Mark, I really want a guy, I just use the example, who's very stable. And I say, are you stable? No, I'm not stable at all. I'm not talking about being emotional. I'm talking about being completely impulsive and then asking for someone who's stable. Or they might say, Mark, I really want a man who values his fitness and goes to the gym all the time. And I say, do you do that? And they say, no, I walk once a week. You can't attract what you're not. Now, the slight caveat here, and this is important, is in modern day, we are looking for someone who is both a best friend and a lover. No pressure, all that in one person. That's pretty challenging to attract. So the one slight caveat here is some traits, the lover style traits will be opposite attracts, whereas the friend style traits will be a straight match. In other words, let's say that you want someone who's responsible. That's a trait you need to embody. That's typically a trait you're going to want in a friend. Let's say you want someone who values health. That's a trait you're going to need to embody as well. Let's say that though you're looking for a lover trait, a masculine feminine trait, like I want a man who takes the lead. Well, that's fair, but in this case, you don't want to be a good leader, but you need to be an equally good follower, as in you need to trust. Let's say I want a man who makes lots of decisions, or I want a man who's really tough and stoic. Well, again, you need to be very trusting and good at surrender, or in the big and strong version, you need to be great with your emotions and keeping him safe emotionally. So it's important to understand that you're going to have to embody all of the traits that you want to attract. Now, there's never going to be a perfect match for all of them, but the idea is it's very unattractive if a woman comes up and says, I want to go with all these traits, and she's not also embodying them. Just be aware that there are a few where you need to embody, it's still the equal trait, as in you still need to embody this to the same degree, but you might be embodying the opposite trait, as in a few of the examples I gave there. Number 4. Failing to calibrate your interest. You can hook a good guy at the start, but if you don't train him how to treat you via his effort, he will lose interest and ultimately lose respect for you. In my book, I talk about the 80-20 rule, which states you take 80% of your opinion about a man from the last 20% of the time you've been seeing him. So if you've been seeing a man 5 months, that means your main opinion of him is going to be from the last month you've been seeing him. The point of this is that dating should be a constant calibration. It's training someone how to treat you. Let's use the training a dog metaphor. When the dog does well, you give it a treat. You show that the dog did the right thing and you give it a treat. When the dog does badly, you reduce your interaction with the dog. You reduce contact. I hate to say it, but it's exactly the same. Training a man is these little behaviors that he does, you need to be showing positive affect. You made me feel so great. That feels lovely. I love it when you do that. This made my day. All those little things that you say are patting the dog. It's saying, yeah, you did a great job here. That's how a man knows to keep putting in effort, because he's getting that positive feedback. And at the same time, if he behaves poorly, then you're giving him that feedback in the form of your negative emotions, or perhaps even reducing the amount of contact he gets with you. This calibration is how he slowly learns, when I do good, I get more girl. When I do bad, I lose girl. And over time, he has to put more and more effort in to sustain you. This constant effort makes him value you. It's something in psychology called the IKEA effect, which basically states we value things more the more effort we put into them, interestingly. It's like if you buy a stock, you're suddenly watching that stock because you're invested in it. Well, if you invest in a woman, you're really watching that woman because you're invested in her. The art and finesse for you as a woman is making sure that you are guiding him towards the behavior that you want and consistently rewarding it, being grateful for it, spotting it, giving him positive feedback consistently all the time. Not just being assumptive and saying, well, he should just do that, or being entitled, consciously rewarding it all the time and then giving him feedback when he's giving not so good behavior. That's the reward effort cycle, and that's how we know as men, okay, we're doing a good job here. So make sure you calibrate your interest, because if you fail to calibrate your interest, you could attract a really good guy at the beginning, but as time goes on, he'll realize, oh, this girl doesn't require any maintenance. This woman, I should say, doesn't require any maintenance. I can just slack off here. And as soon as a man slacks off with something, he's not going to value it anymore. He's no longer going to be invested in it. Number 5, slightly more superficial, but please never ever do this. It's using text, or I should say relying on text, to build communication and connection. Text is way overdone. It's way overrated. Its value is minor at best. It can be useful for setting up dates, a bit of banter, occasional conversations, that type of stuff. But please, one of the most unattractive things you can ever do to a secure, functioning, high-quality man is send him a huge novel on text about some conflict you've had, is think that a good morning text or a good night text is the way to know that you're loved. Like, please have a higher bar for yourself than this. Please raise your standards. Text is a very low-hanging fruit. It sucks for conflict. It sucks for good communication. It sucks for receiving love. It sucks for everything. I'm not saying it's not a small part, but I'm saying have a relationship where it's a bonus, not a necessity. Build connection, have present time, do date nights, do phone calls, have those as your standards, and make the text a nice to have but not necessary. Having any type of conflict or any type of real value in connection over text is just not going to be attractive to a man who wants to build a real connection, because he too is not going to have that value over text. And text relationships, let's be honest, you don't want those, and they don't have really much value to anyone. So those are the 5 things that I've seen in client sessions recently. Make sure you're not doing those. If you want to attract a husband material guy in the next 3 to 6 months, avoid those things. And if you want extra help, make sure to book in with me. I'll take you through my process and how it works. And finally, you can join the Queen's Club community as well, where we do dating coaching every Thursday in there. So check that out. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video very soon.